Hello, my fellow GD creators. I see you're here to make stuff move in the GD editor, and I don't want to keep you waiting at all. So here's a beginner's guide on absolutely everything you'll need to know about the move trigger. First of all, however, we do need to go over the topic of group IDs. If you click this little edit group button up here, you'll open this scary menu with a lot of buttons. However, the only ones we have to focus on now are these ones right here. So basically what you're going to want to do is click this next free button right here. This uses the next available group ID, and then make sure you click add. This will make the little number that you chose, in this case 1, appear in the box here. You can then actually open your move trigger, and with this edit object button in the bottom right corner, type in your group ID. Now that that's over with, I can't stress this enough, I have to say something very, very important. You could screw some things up if you get this wrong. One block, or one grid space, as I refer to it in this video, is actually 10 units, not 1. It is 10 units. I don't know why it's like that, but that's how it is. But back to the move trigger, you can also set how long you want the trigger to take for the object to get to its destination with the move time option. If you want it to be 1 second, you can put 1 second in here. Because this move X indicates left and right, and the move Y indicates up and down, if we want Bob to move 3 grid spaces to the left in the span of 1.5 seconds, we set this to 0, we set move X to -30, and we set the move time to 1.5. And also, make sure the target group ID is correct. It's always gonna break if this isn't correct. Now all we have to do is activate the trigger, and boom, Bob just moved 3 grid spaces. Here's that with the grid so you can see that in action. Exactly 3 grid spaces. However, you might have noticed that the trigger activated at kind of a random time. This is because there's actually multiple ways to just activate the trigger. The first and default way is this blue line thing. It doesn't actually have a name, I don't think. I'm pretty sure the way this one works is in platformer mode. It activates whenever the song gets to this point, and it either does the same thing as platformer mode in classic mode, or it waits until the player crosses the line. I'm not too sure which one it is, because usually both happen at the same time, but if you want to test it, be my guest. However, in order to activate the other 2 options, we can come into here, and you'll see down here in the bottom left corner, you'll see touch trigger and spawn trigger, and also silent. We're not going to go over silent right now because it's kind of whack. It doesn't really make any sense. It can also crash the game sometimes, so yeah, not very beginner friendly. However, first I'll go over touch trigger. Basically, touch trigger will make this little blue box appear around your move trigger, and this does, well, exactly what you think. It'll wait until the player touches it to activate the group. The other option is spawn trigger, and this one's a bit more complicated. You'll see that there's no blue line or blue box, and that's because this requires a little bit more group IDs. What we're gonna have to do if we want a spawn triggered trigger is we have to set the group ID of the move trigger by doing the whole next free add thing as before. And then we're gonna have to place yet another trigger here, the spawn trigger. This trigger can be set to touch trigger or spawn trigger as well, but if you put the group ID in here, and I'll just set it to touch trigger as an example, you'll see that this move trigger won't activate until we spawn it with the spawn trigger. This whole spawn trigger thing is very useful in very advanced levels. Trust me, spawn triggers are lifesavers. You can also allow the trigger to be activated multiple times if you select this multi-trigger after selecting either touch trigger or spawn trigger. For some reason, it doesn't do anything with the default option. And by the way, this whole touch trigger, spawn trigger thing is about the same thing for every single trigger, so I thought it was worth mentioning here. Over here on the right side, you might have noticed this easing section. This allows you to choose your, guess what? Yeah, if I went over all of these in this one video, it'd be way too long, so I just suggest testing all of them out and seeing which one works, because they all work in their own situations. Unfortunately, you're not able to mix and match them yet. It would be really cool if you were able to. On the other hand, I can guarantee you've noticed these lock X and lock Y sections, because they take up like half of the menu. These are absolute game changers, so take notes or something. Setting either of these to player or camera will cause these values to completely change. I'm not too sure what these are supposed to represent, but I think about them as percentages. Also, in this section of the video, I'm only going to talk about the X-axis, but everything that I say here applies to the Y-axis as well. Basically, if this mod Xbox is set to 1, aka 100%, that means that the object that you're targeting will move with you for the same amount of time as this move time. So this is set to 1 second, we'll put it on touch trigger, and if I just touch this, now it'll move with us for 1 second. If you set this number to 0.5, aka 50%, it'll move at 50% of the player's speed, at a constant speed too, so this is really useful if you want an object to follow the player at like 30% of the player's speed or something. Also, fun fact, if you set the move time to -1, it'll make the trigger run forever, but on the other hand, this is probably by far the easiest way to make parallax in this game. Parallax is when an object further back moves slower than an object in the front. It makes everything look 3D and a lot nicer. I forgot to mention, you can also make it move faster than the player's speed if you set this to like 1.2 or 120%. Now this will move slightly faster than the player wherever they go. The lock X to camera option is pretty much the same thing. It just moves with the camera instead of the player. I will not be going over target mode, direction mode, small step, or dynamic mode, because these are also really advanced, and I also have no idea how to use them, so yeah, they're not very beginner friendly either. However, for now, this should be everything you need to know about the move trigger in order to get started with it. You should now be able to not only make objects move with ease, but also make parallax. I might make a more sophisticated and dedicated parallax tutorial in the future, so make sure to tell me in the comments if you want to see that. And while you're in that area, maybe even consider subscribing to see more tutorial videos like these. If you like Geometry Dash, you might like me, that's all I'm saying. Thank you all, and have a great day. Secret Razor Z, out. Peace!
Geometry Dash.